Hey, what's up guys, John here. Last year I went on a cross-country tour from Miami. I went to Arizona, to Texas, to California, to Denver, and no matter where I went, it felt like the entire nation was under construction. Huge master plan communities, entire neighborhoods going up at once. You would see companies like D.R. Horton and Lennar and America's biggest home builders building homes like they couldn't throw them up fast enough. Everyone thought rents would grow at 20% a year. Some thought 30% a year. It was a complete frenzy. Fast forward to right now, and the data says the boom has completely flipped. Housing construction hasn't just slowed down, it's fallen off a cliff.
Building permits for new home construction have fallen over 10% below year-ago levels. This housing slowdown is not likely to be anything as bad as the subprime mortgage crisis of 2009.
Builders who were once confident that they could sell anything are now slashing prices, offering huge concessions, and some even trying to offload entire communities in a single sale. And the numbers, they back it up. Housing starts just hit their lowest point in more than 2 years. Permits for new single-family homes are dropping, and multifamily projects, they're getting canceled left and right.
It looks like at this point that builders are not confident in their ability to either sell these houses or to get them built. Housing starts fall by 6.8%. The building permits also down by 4%.
And here's the crazy part. These big companies that were once racing to build entire communities and throwing up homes left and right are now racing to offload them. They're offering mortgage rate buy downs. Some are slashing prices tens of thousands of dollars on a single house. Others are trying to offload entire communities to private equity.
Now, 37% of builders reported cutting prices in August. That's down from 38% in July, but it's been at 37 or 38 for the past 3 months. The average price reduction, 5% in August. It's the same it's been every month since last November.
Think about that. Neighborhoods that were once built and meant for families are now going to be offloaded to private equity, and private equity will likely rent them back to the American people. It's not just a slowdown, it's an entire shift of who gets to own America's housing stock. So why is all of this happening? A big part of this comes down to the Fed and inflation. Just recently, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates for the first time in years.
In support of our goals and in light of the shift in the balance of risks, today the Federal Open Market Committee decided to lower our policy interest rate by a 1/4 percentage point.
That does not suddenly make homes more affordable. Prices are still sky high, and mortgage rates, even after these cuts, are still out of reach for millions of Americans. And then you have tariffs, which Jerome Powell himself admitted these are not taxes paid by China and foreign countries. These are taxes paid by corporations and Americans. Think about it. Walmart, Home Depot, Target, they're not just going to eat those costs. They pass them directly to the consumer. And those higher costs bleed into everything that we buy, from construction materials to groceries to the gas that you need to get to work. So while the Fed is trying to cool the economy with rate cuts, the real problem is that inflation is sticky. It's stuck in the parts of your life that you cannot avoid. Food, rent, healthcare, and that's what makes this downturn so dangerous. Here's the problem most people are feeling but often don't see it in the headlines. The numbers just don't add up anymore. Just last month, in August 2025, housing starts dropped to 1.3 million units a year. That's down more than 8% from July. And single-family homes, they're down 890,000 units. A 7% drop in one single month. Builders aren't slowing down because they want to. They're slowing down because buyers can no longer afford to buy a home. Now look at the other side of the equation, household income. Because this is a squeeze nearly every family in America is feeling. Back in 2019, the average household income was $83,260 when you adjust for inflation. Fast forward to 2024, the average household income is $83,730. It's basically no change, zero, in 5 years. Most Americans' paychecks have not moved during that entire time. But the cost of everything else? That's a completely different story. Housing costs have jumped more than 30% since 2019. Groceries are up by about 30% during that same period. Gas used to be about $2.60 a gallon, now it's about $3.20 a gallon on average. Healthcare, home utilities, everything has gone up in a pretty substantial way from 2019 to today. So here's the reality. The average household, they're not just standing still, they're falling behind. Most Americans are making about the same that they were in 2019. But every bill is much larger. The gap between stagnant income and rising costs are exactly why many families are holding back. They're taking on debt to survive, or just giving up the idea of ever owning a home. It's not about Americans wanting less. People just simply can't afford more. So what happens when owning a home just doesn't add up anymore? People are forced to turn to renting. And the numbers are eye-opening. In most American cities, it is roughly 38 to 61% cheaper to rent than it is to own.
Owning a home is now 40% more expensive than renting one.
The average monthly cost of a new lease is just under $2,200. The average monthly payment on a new home is just above $3,300. So in other words, it's about 52% more expensive to buy than to rent right now.
That is not a small difference. If your mortgage would be $3,000, you could likely find somewhere to rent that's comparable for about $1,800. You multiply that month after month and you'll see why most families are now opting into renting over owning. Let's look at some real examples. In San Jose, California, buying a median price home means about an $8,300 a month mortgage payment. Renting the same type of home in that market, about $3,500. That's more than $4,800 a month in savings in San Jose. In LA, it's about a $1,900 a month gap. Owning might be about $5,400 a month with the average home in LA, or you could rent that type of property for about $3,400 a month. And it's not just California. In dozens of major cities across America, the numbers look very similar. It's a lot cheaper to rent than it is to own. Some Americans are simply opting to walk away from their homes. They cannot sell it, they don't have the equity, and so they're forced to cost cut and save and move into renting. Some are walking away from mortgages they can't keep up with. Others are choosing to rent long term, even if they could technically buy, because the monthly cost of owning are just too much to absorb, and the savings are too big to ignore. And in places where the gap is much smaller, like Pittsburgh, Toledo, and Cleveland, investors are diving in. They're buying up homes in bulk and they're converting them to rentals. So for a growing share of Americans, renting is no longer just a temporary stop on the way to home ownership. It's becoming the default option. Now let's zoom out, because housing is just one piece of the puzzle. The real fear is that inflation is sticking around in parts of your life you cannot avoid. Since 2019, the Consumer Price Index shows that food prices are up 30%.
Food prices continue to outpace inflation, increasing by 28% since 2019.
U.S. consumer prices posted their biggest jump in 7 months in August, driven by higher housing and food costs.
Gasoline is up 25%, and overall shelter costs are up in a substantial way, whether it be renting or owning. Insurance, for example, is up between 30 and 50% depending on your market.
Homeowners' insurance rates are rising across the country.
Homeowners nationwide are facing a crisis, right? Skyrocketing insurance premiums or outright policy non-renewal.
Even healthcare and basic utilities have climbed rapidly. Meanwhile, median household income has barely budged. That's why inflation expectations are surging. The Federal Reserve cut interest rates recently.
At today's meeting, the committee decided to lower the target range for the federal funds rate by a quarter percentage point to 4 to 4.25%.
Hoping to prevent a recession, but even Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that inflation is going to be stickier than he expected. And tariffs, they're going to push costs higher. And those costs, they won't just disappear. They won't be eaten by Wall Street. They'll get passed on to Main Street. So the problem isn't just inflation in the abstract. It's that it's concentrated in essentials. You can skip a new phone or delay a vacation, but you can't stop paying rent, and you can't stop eating, and you can't stop driving to work. And that's what makes this so dangerous. It's squeezing people in parts of their life that they literally cannot cut back on. So where does this all lead? If you put all the pieces together, the picture is not pretty. Housing costs are slowing, incomes are flat, and inflation is hitting all essentials. That means affordability is going to get much, much worse before it gets any better. The Fed is likely to keep cutting rates throughout the rest of the year, but that does not automatically solve a problem. Lower rates might give some temporary relief on mortgages, but they also risk fueling inflation if prices do not cool down. And that could force the Fed into a corner. Cut too fast, inflation sticks. Cut too little, the job market weakens further. Meanwhile, private equity and institutional investors are sitting on the sidelines, ready to scoop up more housing. If builders cannot sell to families, they'll be forced to sell to the highest bidder, which will likely be Wall Street, which will turn these entire communities into rentals. So the choices for everyday Americans narrows. Do you stretch your budget and risk owning at the peak? Do you rent long-term and give up on ownership? Or do you move entirely, chasing affordability in a handful of cities? None of these are easy decisions, but for millions of families, These decisions are being made by force. Last year, I showed you the building boom all across America. Rows of new homes going up in Texas. And it seemed like nearly everyone was building ADUs and small multifamily throughout Los Angeles. The skyline was littered with cranes all throughout Miami. And entire communities were being developed all throughout Phoenix and Austin. Today, that boom has flipped into a rapid slowdown, and we are witnessing in real time an affordability collapse. Incomes are flat, and essentials are just going to continue to get more expensive. And renting is becoming the default for millions of Americans who once dreamed about owning a home. The question is simple: how much worse is this going to get before it gets any better? Will the Fed's rate cut actually ease the pressure? Or are we heading into a cycle where Wall Street owns more and more American neighborhoods? What I believe happens next is that insurance on homes will continue to get more and more expensive in many parts of America. Property taxes will get more and more expensive. Utilities. We're going to start seeing higher costs being pushed on to homeowners, and this could present a massive opportunity to smart and savvy Americans that have a stable income, their own business, a high-paying job, large savings to be able to step in and buy some really great real estate. As they say, money is made when there's blood in the streets. And it looks like that could be right in front of us. What do you think about this entire situation? Let's have a conversation about this below, and I'll catch you next video.